So we are in Daf Yud Beis Amid Beis, towards the bottom. Three lines from the bottom. Amrav Yehuda Mishmul. Ein Ma'avin Shashana. Yehuda Mishmul says he's going to bring a machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi, and it's going to be his version. First, going to see his version, then there's going to be a brayso that's going to have a whole different version of this machlokes. So he says, Ein Ma'avin Shashana elim kein hoysa tkufa chasera ruba shel chodesh. You're only ma'av the shana, like we said. There's such a concept that we add on an extra month, an extra adar, when the tkufas are out of whack, when the seasons are out of whack. So the seasons are dependent on the equinoxes and the solstices, and these seasons are called by the month in which they typically begin. So you have tkufas Tishrei, which starts the autumn season. So you have Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev. Then after that comes Kufas Teves, which is what we're in now. If you go outside, you can see Teves Shvat Adar is winter, followed by Tkufas Nisan. Nisan is Nisan, Iyar, Sivan is the spring, followed by Tkufas Tammuz, which is Tammuz of and Elul, which is the summer. And each of these tkufas, the changeover happens in the middle of the day. So the problem is, right, sometimes since there are 365 days in the solar year and 354, I think, in the lunar year, every year, Tishrei will start, let's say what we'll mostly be talking about is Tishrei. Tishrei will start creeping earlier and earlier as compared to when the season starts, right? The lunar year is shorter, so therefore Tishrei, the months of the lunar year, are always going to get like 11 days earlier compared to the seasons each year. So eventually it's going to get where you're not going to have that much of the tkufa will be starting later and later, where Tekufa will be coming close to the beginning of Cheshvan, will be at the end of Tishrei instead of right at the beginning. So then you are Ma'ava the Shan in order to bring it into line. So Zak Gemara. So Yehuda Mishmul says, Ein Ma'avin Hashan, okay, Hoysa Tekufa Chaser Ruba Shel Chodesh. Unless the month of Tishrei, it's missing most of the month. That means the Tekufa, it's supposed to begin at the beginning of Tishrei, the autumn season, but it's missing most of the month because it got pushed into Ruba Shel Chodesh. The Kama Ruba Shel Chodesh, what does Ruba Shel Chodesh mean? Shisa Asher Yom, 16 days. Divrei Reb Yehuda. Yehuda says, if you have that the Tkufa is pushed till the 17th day, Rashi is very clear that when we say that it's missing 16 days, it means that the 17th day is when the changeover of the season starts. Yossi says, if you have 21 days of Tishrei that are still in the summer tkufa, and the 22nd day is the day of the changeover. Like, let's just see, Rashi makes this clear. If you have to make up 21 days from Tishrei, that it's still extending Tkufas Tammuz into Tishrei, Tkufas Tishrei nefeles b'chof beis. It means that the Tkufa, the day of the switchover, is on the 22nd. So even though we're saying 16 and 21, that means that's how many days are from the previous season, and there's one, and the day of the switchover is the next day. And Shneim Mikra Echadarshu, both Rabbi Yosi, who said that the day of the Tkufa switchover is on the 22nd day, and both Rabbi Yehuda, who said it's on the 17th day, they're both dashing for the same pasuk. Chag Asaf Tkufat Hashana, because the pasuk says Chag Asaf, which is Sukkot, but Chag Asaf means the time of harvesting, and harvesting takes place on. It's talking about the Chag, but it's talking about also Asaf. When you harvest, obviously you can only harvest on Chol Hamoed. You can't harvest on Yom Tov. So Chava Asaf Tkufat Hashana. That's when the Tkufat Hashana is. Mar Sava Kula Chag Be'inan. One man, meaning Rabbi Yehuda, holds you need the kulas chag v'ina betkufas chadash. You need the entire Chol Hamoed to be included in the new season. So that means if you even have one day of Chol Hamoed that's still from the summer tkufa, then you have to be ma'aber it in order to push it back by a month. You add an adar, then obviously then Sukkot is going to come out a month later as compared to the season, and therefore it will obviate this problem. Umar Savar, Rabbi Yossi holds mixes chag v'ina betkufa chadasha. He says all you need is one day of the Chol Hamoed to be still part of the correct kufa. So that's why Rabbi Yehuda says the 16th day, because as we're going to see in a second, they both hold that the day of the switchover is the beginning of the next day. So therefore, if it fell on the 17th day, so that means the 16th day, which is the first day of Chol Hamoed, is still going to be from the summer. So therefore, you have to be ma'aber in order to avoid that. And according to that's according to Rabbi Yehuda. And according to Rabbi Yossi, if it's going to switch over on the 22nd day, so that day is going to be considered part of the next kufa. So then it will come out that the last day of, so then you don't have any days of Chol Hamoed that are in part of Tkufas Tammuz, so that's why you're going to have to be ma'aver the Shana. So the question is, do you need a part? Rabbi Yehuda says you need a part of Chol Hamoed to be in the correct season, and Rabbi Yossi says you need to have the entire Chol Hamoed as part of the correct season. The Zok Gemara, my Kasavi. And this is, what do they hold? And we already explained this in our explanation. So we said the switchover happens on either the 22nd or the 17th. Is that considered the last day of the previous season or the first day of the next season? The Gemara says, if you hold that day of the changeover of the Tkufas is the last day of the previous season, either way, if you hold that it's part of the next month, so you're not going to have you won't meet what you need in order to be ma'av the shana according to either of them. According to Yehuda, it says that you need to have the whole Yom Tov to be, according to Yehuda, you need to have all of the Chol Hamoed days have to be part of Tkufas Tishrei. So, and that's why he says 16. But if that day is still considered, the 17th day is still part of the previous month, then you're gonna have one day that's still part of Tkufas Tammuz instead of Tkufas Tishrei. And the same thing with Rabbi Yossi. You have to have one of the days, but if that last day belongs to Tammuz, so then you're going to have one day of Tammuz that day is going to still be part of Tammuz. So you're still going to have one day. You're not going to have any days that are going to be that's going to be in the correct kufa, in the Tkufas Tishrei. Zok to Gemara. So Elamai, we have to say, Ela Kasari Yom Tkufa Maschel. They must hold that the Yom Tkufa, the day of the changeover, is the day of the next month, and that's why, according to both Rabbi Yossi and Yehuda, they say the 16th day and the 21st day, rather than the 17th day and the 22nd day. Meisei Yom Tkufa Goimer Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. We have a brisa that has a whole different version of this machlekes. First of all, we say, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Yom Tkufa Goimer. So the Gemara says that's right away over there, that's a steer. We just proved that according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says 16 days, if the Yom Tkufa is Goimer, then you're going to have the first day of Chol Hamoed is going to be considered to be part of Tkufas Tammuz, and you would not need to be Ma'av the Shana on 6th when it changes over on the 17th day. Just a second. Right. If I'm sorry, according to Rabbi Yehuda, even if it was it was the other way around. You would not need 16 days. If it was Tkufas Geimer, then we would just need 15 days into Tishrei, because the following day, which is the first day of Chol Hamoed, would still be considered to be part of the previous month. So we said proved before that Rabbi Yehuda holds Yom Tekufa must be maschal according to Rabbi Yehuda. Now we're saying Yom Tekufa Geimer according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Yom Tekufa maschal. Rabbi Yossi we're still in good shape. He still says Yom Tekufa maschal like we proved before. So that's one problem with this price of Oitanya. Ein ma'avin Hashanah. We're not ma'avin Shalom ken hoisat kufa chasera ruba shel chodesh, unless most of the month is chaser, and that's the same as what we said earlier in Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel. But then we continue with the question was, how do you define that? The kama, how much is that? Now we're going to bring a whole bunch of shitas. Ruba shel chodesh. There has to be kama ruba shel chodesh. How much ruba shel chodesh? Shisha asa yom. The Tana Kama says shisha asa yom, which is exactly what we had said before b'shem Rabbi Yehuda. And now we bring this as the Tana Kama. And now Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, shtei yadis b'chodesh. Rabbi Yehuda is saying now a different shita. Before he said 16 days. Now he's saying two portions of the month. It means 2/3. Whenever we say yadis, we say two portions. It means two, and the numerator and followed by the next, like 3 yadis would mean 3/4. 2 yadis is 2/3. It means the numerator and the denominator is one more than that. So in any case, this clearly is not the same as Rabbi Yehuda. We had seen b'shem Rabbi Yehuda Mashmuel. He had said it was 16 days, a maximum of 16 days, and then Yom Avad Shana. Yom Avad Shana for 16 days, but 15 days not. And now he's saying need 20 days. Rabbi Yossi Aimer, Rabbi Yossi says Mechash Shisha Ashel Lefnei Pesach. Rabbi Yossi says a new thing. Rabbi Yossi before had said Echad V'Esrim Yayim, and now he's saying you count 16 days before Pesach. Ma'avrin. If there are 16 days before Pesach starts, then you're Ma'aver the Shana, Shisha Asel Lefnei Chag, Ein Ma'aver. 16 before Sukkot, you're not Ma'aver. So the Gemara is going to have to explain, what does this mean? Why are we switching over to talk about how many days there are in the month before, in Tkufas Ad of Tkufas Tevis, before Pesach starts, and it switches that you have the correct kufa before them. Rav Shimon Aimer, so now so far we said the Tanakama, we said Rehud and Rabbi Yossi. Rehud and Yossi are different than both Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel's. Shmuel Amar Rehud Amar Shmuel said. And now we have a fourth sheet. The Rav Shimon Aimer, Av Shisha Asaf Ne'achag Ma'avrim. He says Ma'aver for 16 days, which the Gemara is going to ask. That sounds exactly like the Tanakama. And he said, Ruba Shachad Shisha Shiyayim. Achayim Miyutei. Then there's a fifth shita that say Miyutei. V'kama Miyutei Abba Asayim. They say if you have 14 days of the previous Tkufa, of Tkufas Tamas in Tishrei, then you're Ma'ava the Shana. So again, that's going to need an explanation. Why should it be like that? It's like the Gemara Kasha. First of all, we brought this whole brisa as a Kasa and Yehuda Amar Shmuel of what he said the shita of Rabbi Yehuda was 16 days. And Rabbi Yossi said 21 days, which really means that the Tkufa is on the 17th or the 22nd day. And now we're saying, that Rabbi Yehuda said, first of all, he said directly that Tkufa is Gaimer, the Yom Tkufa is Gaimer, it's the last day of the previous Tkufa, which is a steer to Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, and also Rabbi Yehuda said himself 20 days as opposed to 16, and Rabbi Yossi said something about 16 days before Pesach. What does that have to do with what he said? Rabbi Yossi said Echad V'Esrim Yom of Tishrei. So Amama, So that's we have two kashas. So Einachanami it's Shver Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Now we have to explain this price. Amar Yehuda I'm shtei yadis b'chaydish esim yom. Basically, I'm mechash when she says yom lefnei Pesach ma'avrin. Rabbi Yossi says yom mechashev 16 days before Pesach yom ma'avrin. Zok the Gemara Hainu Rabbi Yehuda, meaning that Rashi explains that there are 90, how does it work? 91 days in each tkufa. So if you add on, this is just a roundabout way of saying what day the tkufa is going to be in Tishrei. If you add on 91 times 2, which is 182, you have two tkufas from the beginning of tkufas Nisan, right? And tkufas Nisan came out on the 16th day of, like according to Rabbi Yossi, on the 16th day of Nisan. You add on to that, it's going to come out on the 22nd day of, it's going to come out in the 22nd day of Tishrei. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's going to be, the change of the tkufa will be on the 22nd day, which would mean that, I'm sorry, they would go 21 days into Tishrei. And, yeah. So Rabbi Yossi is holding that as long as you have some of Tkufas Tammuz in Cholamoid, that's going to be enough that you don't have to be Ma'av. So for Gemara, Hainu Rabbi Yehuda. That's the same as Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said Sheikh Chaf Yom, and we're going to, as we're going to explain, Rabbi Yehuda holds that comes about because he's saying Yom Tkufa is Geimer. So therefore that really means that the 21st day, and that was going to be considered the last day of, that's the last day of Cholamoid, that's Hoshana Rabbah, and that's going to be considered the last day of Tkufas Tammuz. So you have no days of Tkufas Tammuz and Cholamoid. And Rabbi Yossi is saying the same thing. Rabbi Yossi is saying the 21st, it's on Tkufas, the 21st, the 22nd day, it's on the 21st day, but he holds Yom Tkufa Maschel, so it's really a part of the next day, next month. So even though they're both coming out, that it's going to be that you have to have all of the days of Cholamoid being, if any day of Cholamoid is part of the correct season, Tkufas Tishrei, you're not Ma'aver, but the difference is going to be which day the Yom Tkufa comes out. According to Rabbi Yehuda, who says Yom Tkufa Goimer, the Tkufa has to change, your Tkufa has to change over a day before Cholamoid, before the last day of Cholamoid, on the 20th day. According to Rabbi Yossi, it could even, in order for it to be Ma'ober, and according to Rabbi Yossi, who says Yom Tkufa Maschel, it has to be one day later, because that day is anyway going to be part of the next month. So if it would be, if the Yom Tkufa would be on the last day of Cholamoid, you would not be Ma'aber, because that's still part of Tkufas Tishrei. Amar Ma, Shisa Asal Lefnei Chag Ein Ma'aver. If it's 16 days before, so Rabbi Yehuda continued. So I'm sorry, there's Rabbi Yossi. Yossi Mechashev Shisa Asal Lefnei Pesach Ma'avrin. We're Mechashev 16 days before Pesach and Ma'aver, which, like we said, comes out on the 21st day of Tishrei, when you add the 182 days. But Shisha Asal Lefnei Chag Ein Ma'aver. You're not Ma'aver for 16 days. It sounds like, according to this, that if it's 16 days before Chag, you're not Ma'aver, but if it would be 17 or 18, then you would be Ma'aver. But he said it has to be, if there's any, he agreed, like we just said now, according to Rabbi Yossi, that you need, as long as you have any part of Cholamoid that is part of the correct kufa of Tkufas Tishrei, you're not going to be ma'aver. So it's but from the fact that he says if it's on the 16th day you're not ma'aver, it sounds like on the 17th or the 18th day you are ma'aver. But that's still in the middle of Chol Hamoed, so you still have a couple of days of Chol Hamoed that are in the correct kufa of Tkufas Tishrei, so you shouldn't have to be ma'aver in that case either. So Gemara, look, I divide the a ma'aver. No, if it would be 17 and 18, it also wouldn't be ma'aver. I did the Tana Reisha, she saw something Pesach, Tanami, she saw something Chag. He just picked 16, but it doesn't mean that that's the outer limits of how many days you could have of Tkufas Tammuz into Tishrei. It could even be more than that, because like we proved, Rabbi Yossi holds that if any part of Chol Hamoed is in Tkufas Tishrei, you're not going to be ma'aver. Finally, next sheet. He said even 16 days before the Chag Yema'aver. In fact, that's exactly the same in the Brisa. That was the Tanakama. The Gemara says no, when it says 16, one of them means to say that the 16th day was the day of the Tkufa, and that the Tkufa changed. The other one saying the following day was the Yom of the Tkufa. The one who says that the 16th day was the Yom of the Tkufa, he holds Yom Tkufa is Goimer. So therefore you have one day, even that first day of Chol Hamoed is still part of the previous month. So therefore you're Ma'aber. The other one's Yom Tkufa is maschel, so it could be even a day earlier. It's still it has to be a day later, that because otherwise that first day would still be part of, according to Manam Yom Goyim, and then it would be that first day would still be part of the previous month. You wouldn't be ma'aver. So he holds it has to be one day earlier. As he says, when it says 16, it means mamish the 16th day. The other one says the Yom Tekufa is the following day because he holds Yom Tekufa Goyim. The loy misaimi, we don't know which one says which. Find the final pshat we send the brayso. That if it's a miyat of the month, it's 14 days. Where does a 14 day come from? If he holds Yom Tekufa, and he also holds the most stringent shita. Yom Tekufa Goyim, that the day of the Tekufa is part of the previous month. And you need the entire month. You still have it. 14 is Erev Yom Tov. So the day after the Tekufa, even if it's on the 15th day, which is the 14 days are still part of Tekufas Tammuz. So then the 15th day is the day of the switchover, and that day is considered still part of Tammuz. But you still would, and you need the whole Chag has to be part of the following month, but you still have it because that's just the first day of Yom Tov. It's not yet Chol Hamoed. Amar Shulbar Yitzchak, which we said Chag Asif refers to Chol Hamoed. Amar Shulbar Yitzchak, Achein betkufas Nisan Kaimi. They're not talking about 14 days. They're not talking about Tishrei. It's talking about Nisan. Yosef Shmar is Chodesh Aviv. Shmar Aviv shel Tekufa shehei b'Chodesh Nisan. It's saying that you have to be careful that the Aviv of the Tekufa, the ripening of the Tekufa, should be b'Chodesh Nisan. So you have to, when it says, you have to make sure that when the Chodesh, over here, the Chodesh doesn't mean the month. It means the Hischatshus, the new month. So the new season. So you have to be careful about the new season, that it will happen during Chodesh Nisan, in the Chodesh Nisan, in the part of the month where you still have a new moon, which means in the first half of the month, which is only 14 days. So you have a specific pasuk telling you that you're ma'aber the shana if it's less than if Tkufas Teves goes in 14 days into Nisan. Why can't you just add one day to Adar, right? Instead of making a whole extra month of Adar, just make Adar one day later, and then instead of the 14th day, then in that case the season will happen one day earlier, and you'll have less than a half of the month that will be in the wrong season. He He was counting backwards. Until the miyut yema'aver, so it means from 29 days, you take away 14, that leaves you 15 days. So if you have 15 days, then you have to be ma'aver the chodesh, because then even if you add one day, it's not going to be enough. He says no. This whole pshat that the when they say 14, they're talking about Nisan is incorrect. It's talking about Tishrei. So where do you get why Tishrei? We said it. No matter what, it's going to come out the latest that the Tkufas Tishrei is switching over, and the final day of the Tkufa is on the first day of Yom Tov. And we said you have to have at least. No one holds that if the only issue is what happens to the days of Cholamoid. The days of Cholamoid, Chag Asar refers to the day of Cholamoid, which is when you can actually harvest. Because they held no, it doesn't just depend on Cholamoid, it means Yom Tov itself. The Yom Tov Rishon, Kul Chag B'Inin, Yom Tov Rishon, Chag Asif Ksiv, Chag Haba B'Zman Asif. When the Torah says Chag Asif, it means the part of the Chag that comes, it means the Chag that comes in the time of Asifa, the time of harvest, but it doesn't refer to actually harvesting on Chag, which would require that it be Cholamoid. It just means, even though it says Chag Asif, it just means the Chag that happens at the time of harvesting, which would even include the first day of Yom Tov. So therefore he says 14 days, and he holds Yom Tekufa Goimer, and it's referring to that day of the 15th is going to still be, you have to be Ma'aber, because it's going to be the first day of Yom Tov, is still going to be part of Tekufas Tammuz, and therefore you're Ma'aber for that. What time is it? 8:30. This next Gemara is very easy, so I think we could finish the Amid. It'll only take another 5 minutes. Tan Rabban, V'samcha Ziknei. We say that for smicha skenim, which we touched as the smicha that the skenim do on the parallel davar shel tzibur, when the whole Klal Yisrael did an avera based on the psak of Bezdin, they bring a special parallel davar, and you need smicha. Tanarabana v'samchu ziknei. The zikenim have to be saimich. They have to rest their hands on this carbon. Yachal ziknei ashok. Maybe it means any skenim, just an old person. Tamalai me'eda, ziknei ha'eda. So it has to be from Dayanim. Eda yachal tani eda. Maybe it means just edim from the eda from the Bezdin of 23. Tamalai ma'eda miyuchadin shebeda. It has to be from the Sanhedrin, the Kama. Even though we're saying that the smicha has to be from the eda, we said it has to be b'shleisha. So how many does it have to be? V'kamein v'samchu shnayim. So he's brought him in the Mishnah. It was a machlekes. So you need 3 or you need 5. So this mandama says v'samchu shnayim ziknei shnayim. Samchu means 2 and zkenim means 2. Ve'en bezdin shakol masifin alein oid echad. Since these are judges, and whenever we deal with judges, we always need an odd amount. And we said 2 plural lashinus, so that comes out to 4. So we need 5. Harekan chamisha. Divri Rabbi Yehuda. That's what we do. Shimon Oima ziknei shnayim. He says just ziknei shnayim. Vein bezdin shakol masifin loyin echad harekan shleisha. Shimon says 3 because he doesn't darshan the samchu shnayim. He does just darshan ziknei shnayim. What does he do with the samchu that we used for the additional 2, which got us to 5? That's to tell you that you have to be saimach. You have to say v'samchu to know to be saimach. Yehuda legufay lo tzarach. Yehuda says you don't have to say v'samchu. The imkain the le'asi v'samchu ledrasha. The imkain the le'asi v'samchu ledrasha litla ziknei eda yadeim al reishapar. Let's just say ziknei ha'edas yadeim al reishapar without v'samchu yadeim al reishapar, and we would know what else are they doing with their hands. They must be doing it. They must be resting their hands on the cover. Rav Shimon, Iksev Hachi, if it would say without v'samach, would just say Yadeim, Havinina Maya al v'samach. When it puts Yadeim al Habehema, it doesn't mean that it puts the mamish on, it just puts his hands near without actually resting them on the cover. Yehuda, Gamar Roish Roish Mi'ayla. He says, no, there's no such thing as just putting your hands near, because we let Darshan Xer Shavar from Ayla. By Ayla, it says specifically you have to be Saimach, you have to rest your hands on. So over here, if we just say Yadeim, we would know it's the same thing. since it says Roish and Roish, we know it also means to be Samech. V'Shimon loy gomer Roish Roish. Okay. Loy gomer Roish Roish Me'al. He doesn't learn Roish Roish Me'al. Tana, Smicha u Smichas Kenim begimel. Smicha and Smichas Kenim is begimel. Now, Smichas Kenim, we just said, means the Kenim on the Param Davar. My Smicha, what's this Smicha that we're referring to? So this is a famous thing. My Smichas Kenim. Rabbi Yochanan's Mismach Sabi. It's talking about the Smicha, that a Rav gets a Smicha, so they have to be Saimach. This is talking about the Smicha to make Dayanim Misumachin a Mumcha. How do you know that you need 3 dayanim to be samech? We're saying over here, both of them, smicha or smichas kenim begimel. Maybe you only need 1. If you say because Moshe Rabbeinu was samech his hands on Yeshua, Moshe was only 1. Moshe was equivalent to the whole Sanhedrin. You should need 71. But Manashach should be 1 of 71. When do you get 3? So Gemara, kasha. It's taka, a good kasha. Okay, I think we'll stop with this now. We went long enough, and we'll continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow.